Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly felt like a fog settled on your shoulders, like something heavy that didn't start with you? As if someone else's sorrow or worry crept under your skin without warning? Maybe you've left a gathering feeling strangely drained, confused, or even irritable, though nothing specific happened. This isn't random. It's not your imagination either. What you experienced was an invisible exchange, a silent transfer of emotional or energetic weight. It happens more than people realize. And while modern life has plenty of explanations, stress, introversion, social fatigue, there's something older, something deeper at play here, long understood by those who studied the unseen layers of existence. Picture this: a single loop of crimson yarn wrapped around the delicate wrist on your non-dominant side. It's not flashy, it's not jewelry, it's not even about the string itself. That red loop is a quiet message, a message to the unseen forces that move between people, echo through spaces, and leave traces in our thoughts. A signal not to the world, but to yourself. That signal says, this space, my space, has rules, that what enters my inner world does so by my invitation, not by accident. Ancient practitioners didn't play with symbols lightly. Every gesture, every color, every knot meant something precise. And the thread you see on the left wrist in so many cultures wasn't for style or superstition. It was language, a message in fiber, a way to speak to the universe without saying a word. The left side of the human body, according to traditions as old as time itself, is the side that pulls things inward. It draws in feelings, influences, unseen waves of emotion, even energies that don't have a name. It's not a metaphor, it's not poetic flourish. It's a recognition of how we're built, not just physically but spiritually. And because that side of the body is so open, so vulnerable, the ancients looked for ways to protect it, not by closing it, but by filtering what flows through. A string made from red wool, soft but strong, would be wrapped around the wrist like a gentle warning sign, not to others, but to the energies themselves. Not everything is welcome here. Not all frequencies get a free pass. And while the thread itself is powerless without intent, when paired with clarity and attention, it becomes something else, something sacred, something alive. Think of it not as an object, but a vow, a conscious act that says, I'm not just living. I'm choosing how to live, choosing what I hold, choosing what I reject. That's the difference between surviving and living awake, between being swept into every emotional storm and standing grounded while the world spins around you. This isn't about fear. It's not about shielding yourself from the world forever. It's about awareness. It's about understanding that not everything needs to come inside your gates. Some things belong outside. Some feelings aren't yours to carry. Some moods aren't born in your body but find their way into your skin through invisible doorways you didn't know were open. The red thread is a door, not a wall, not a prison. A door that you control. And doors are meant to open and close, consciously, deliberately. That's the heart of this old wisdom, that you, the soul inside this body, get to decide what stays and what goes, what builds and what erodes, what nourishes and what drains. And when that little piece of red wool is tied with a steady hand and a steady mind, it doesn't just sit there. It pulses with memory. Memory of your intention, memory of the choice you made to draw a line, not out of panic, but out of self-respect. But there's a trap, a danger hidden in the surface of this ritual. If you wear the thread like a fashion piece, if you tie it with doubt or distraction, it becomes nothing more than decoration, empty of force, void of voice. The thread doesn't protect you. Your energy does. Your focus does. And the thread, like a candle without a flame, waits for your spark to do its work. The real strength lies in how you wear it, not the action, but the awareness behind the action, not the string, but the silent promise it wraps around your wrist, the promise to yourself that you will no longer let your spirit be an open market where every passing mood sets up shop, that you will not take on burdens that are not yours, that you will not mistake someone else's storm for your weather, that you will pause, breathe, and decide. It's not about becoming cold, not about shutting down empathy or building walls around your heart. On the contrary, the thread helps you stay soft without being unguarded, helps you remain open without being porous. Empathy without boundaries is a sponge, but empathy with wisdom is a guide, and guides know when to walk forward and when to pause, when to listen and when to step back. The red thread teaches that rhythm, not through magic, but through practice. In spiritual traditions across the globe, from the hidden mystics of ancient Persia to the sacred rites of early India, the use of color wasn't random. Red wasn't just pigment, it was signal, fire, power, blood, the color of transformation, of identity, of alertness. That's why red was used to mark sacred space, to bind contracts, to warn and to empower. When wrapped around the left wrist, red did something unique. It signaled to the unseen realms that a threshold had been drawn, a gate made of intention, an agreement between the body and the spirit to only welcome what was aligned. This wasn't paranoia. This was discipline, a daily practice of energetic hygiene. Because just like we wash our hands after being in public, the energy field needs attention too. But most people walk around unaware that the heaviness they feel is inherited, absorbed, or borrowed. They confuse emotional weight with personal failure. They blame themselves for being tired, irritable, anxious, never realizing those signals might belong to someone else entirely. The red thread is the whisper that reminds you not everything you feel is yours. Some feelings are just echoes. Some sadness is just residue, and some anger never belonged to you in the first place. So why carry it? Why let it nest in your nervous system and take root in your breath? When you tie the thread, you are not just dressing a wrist. You are anchoring an intention, saying aloud or silently, "This line protects what's mine. This seal honors my center. Let what feeds me come in. Let what harms me stay out." Simple words. But spoken with attention, they become a boundary stronger than steel. Not because the string is special, but because you are. Because your awareness is the real magic, and the thread is just its reminder. Think of your body as a current of light, not just cells and organs, but layers of vibration and memory. That current has doors, vortices, crossings, and the wrist on the left arm is one of them. It's a point where the emotional and physical meet, where the heart's quiet rhythm touches the world through the hand. That's why this place matters. That's why the thread belongs here. Not on the ankle, not on the neck. Here, where what you feel becomes what you do. And a thread? It's humble. It doesn't boast. It doesn't shine. It doesn't draw attention. That's part of its genius. It's small enough to be overlooked, but powerful enough to change your relationship with reality if you let it. In that sense, it's like the soul itself, quiet, unassuming, yet boundless. But the thread also teaches something else. It teaches presence. You can't tie it while rushing. You can't bless it while distracted. It calls for pause, for breath, for sincerity. And if you give it that, it gives something back. Clarity, centeredness, a line of light in a noisy world. What most forget is that spiritual tools lose their potency when used like habits, The ancient ones didn't repeat gestures mindlessly. They didn't light candles without reverence. They didn't chant without belief. Every motion, every symbol was charged with inner presence. That's what made it work. That's why you can't copy someone's ritual and expect it to work unless your soul is there too. The red thread doesn't care about imitation. It cares about intention. You can't pretend your way into protection. You can't decorate your way into peace. But you can choose. You can remember. You can tie that thread not because it's popular, but because you've decided that your energy matters, that your spirit deserves guardianship, that your sensitivity isn't a weakness to be overwhelmed, but a strength to be refined. Some say symbols have no real power, that they're just psychological props. But if that's true, then so is language, so is art, so is music. The truth is, symbols matter because they speak to parts of us that logic can't reach. They remind us, they awaken us, they open doors we forgot we closed. The red thread is one of those symbols, a quiet red whisper around the wrist that says, I am aware, I am choosing, I am not a sponge, I am a vessel, a channel, and what comes through me must be chosen, not random. You don't need a crowd to tie it. You don't need approval. You don't even need others to see it, because its real work is invisible. It doesn't guard you from outside forces as much as it awakens the guardian within. That's its true magic. It reminds you that you're the gatekeeper, that your inner space isn't public property, that your heart isn't for rent. Each time you glance at the red loop, you remember. You feel the knot under your fingers and recall the moment you tied it. The breath you took, the intention you set, that's the real talisman. That memory, that choice, that quiet fire you lit in your own chest. It's not about rejecting the world, it's about showing up for yourself, about choosing what's yours, about filtering what doesn't belong, and doing it not out of fear, but from a deep sense of honor. Your energy isn't a landfill, it's a garden, and you decide what grows there. You're not here to carry everyone's shadow. You're not here to absorb every passing current of tension. You're here to create, to love, to witness, and that requires clarity, that requires strength, that requires protection, not through force but through wisdom. Imagine waking up each morning, stepping into the day with your emotions already carrying weight that doesn't belong to you. Maybe you brushed past a stranger at the store, or glanced through a screen filled with noise and worry, and somehow all of that sank into your chest. You feel off, but you can't trace the source. That's the tricky part about energy. It travels quietly, sticks to you without asking, and stays longer than it's welcome. We talk a lot about diet, exercise, and self-care, but barely whisper about spiritual hygiene, about the invisible upkeep that your emotional landscape craves just as much as your body does. We protect our homes with locks, we shield our skin from the sun, but leave the gates to our spirit wide open, no filters, no guards, no awareness. That's where the thread comes in, not as a solution, but as a gesture, a silent vow that says, today I draw a line. That red loop, soft against your wrist, does not act alone. It reflects what you give it. It mirrors your attention. Tie it with half-hearted thought, and it remains just wool. Tie it with focus, and it becomes a current of power. You're not calling upon superstition here. You're activating something real, the inner choice to stop leaking energy and start containing your essence. When you commit to that symbol, you're not hiding from life. You're preparing to meet it cleanly, fully, without unnecessary noise lodged in your aura. Ancient traditions didn't see the body and soul as separate things. They saw the human form as a bridge, a place where light and flesh held a continuous conversation. The left wrist, according to old schools of wisdom, was one of the vital listening points of this bridge. It didn't just pump blood. It received vibrations, absorbed emotional frequencies, filtered the unseen, even invited in certain subtle forces. And just like you wouldn't leave your windows open in a dust storm, you weren't meant to leave this channel unguarded. The red thread wasn't ornamental, it was functional. And red? It wasn't chosen because it's bright, it was chosen because it burns. Red pulses with meaning. It evokes warmth, life, fire, the color of movement, of primal identity. It's not the color of silence, it's the color of declaration. So when you combine this hue with intention and wrap it around a receiver point on your body, you are performing a sacred equation. Action plus color plus intention equals transformation. But here's where most go wrong. They treat the thread like a costume, a trend. They borrow it from someone else's belief system without stopping to ask themselves, what does this mean to me? Why do I need this? What am I sealing or protecting or affirming? Without those questions, the act becomes empty, like mimicking a prayer without knowing its language. The red thread works only when it's yours, fully yours, woven with your truth, not someone else's. True power is quiet. That's what symbols teach us. They don't scream. They hum. They sit patiently, waiting for you to show up fully, waiting for your inner world to activate the outer gesture. When your spirit is aligned with your actions, even the smallest thing, a glance, a whisper, a knot of yarn, can shape the field around you, can shift your frequency from porous to protected, from scattered to centered. There's a story passed down in one esoteric lineage about a young apprentice who asked his teacher why people still felt tired and drained even after all the meditations, all the mantras, all the sacred tools. The teacher said, because they decorate their lives with symbols instead of inhabiting them. The symbol is only as strong as your commitment to live what it represents. That's what the red thread is asking of you, not to wear it, but to be it, to embody the boundary it stands for, to live the decision it symbolizes. And that decision isn't about hiding, it's about honesty. Honest energy hygiene means knowing when something isn't yours and not forcing yourself to carry it. It means recognizing when someone's words are designed to enter you like darts and choosing not to let them land. It means stepping out of the automatic role of emotional sponge and into the conscious role of emotional steward. You don't soak, you choose, you channel, you filter. The thread becomes your checkpoint, your moment of remembering, your pulse of awareness in a world that constantly wants you to forget your center, to forget your limits, to forget your intuition. But every time you glance down at that slim red ring circling your wrist, you remember, you come home, you feel that you are not here to be everybody's container. You are here to be your own vessel, full and strong, clean and deliberate. This isn't an act of ego, it's an act of spiritual sanity. Boundaries are not rude. Boundaries are compassionate clarity. They allow you to love fully without becoming lost, to care deeply without being consumed. They make space for your yes to be whole because your no has been honored. Imagine tying the thread with both hands trembling, not out of weakness, but because you finally realize what it means to claim your own energy field, not just spiritually, but biologically, emotionally, mentally. Your body responds to that choice. It may be subtle, a shift in posture, a softening of breath, a loosening of inner knots, but it knows. It feels the signal. It hears the command. We protect what matters. You wouldn't leave your phone unguarded in a crowd. Why leave your spirit wide open in a world full of chaos? The truth is, the world will always be noisy. People will always project. Emotions will always fly across rooms like invisible arrows. You can't stop that. But you can decide how you meet it. You can choose the frequency you live on. You can choose what gets to stay and what gets swept out with the next breath. And that's what the red thread helps you do. Not block life, but shape how you experience it. It doesn't shut down your receptors. It fine-tunes them. It's not a blindfold, it's a filter. There's a big difference between turning your back on the world and walking through it with self-respect. The thread belongs to the second. The most powerful people aren't the loudest. They're the ones who know where they end and where the world begins, who understand the flow of energy like a tide and choose what comes in and what stays out, who cleanse themselves not only with water, but with discernment, who meditate not only for peace but for clarity, who tie a thread not to perform a ritual but to anchor a truth. Let this thread, then, be more than fiber. Let it be your quiet revolution, your private act of remembrance in a society that's forgotten how to pause. When you tie it, breathe. Feel your pulse beneath it. Speak to your space. Say, "This is mine." Say, "I welcome what nourishes me." Say, "I am not a dumping ground for the emotional waste of others." And then, walk your life accordingly. Speak with integrity. Rest when your spirit needs restoration. Step away when the room is full of noise you didn't cause and don't need to clean up. Stay present. That's the real magic, not a charm, but your choice, over and over again to be awake. The thread might fray one day. It might come undone. It might snap, and when it does, don't mourn. Bless it. Thank it. It served its purpose. Everything sacred knows when its cycle is complete. Let it go with gratitude, and when you're ready, tie a new one. Not because the old failed, but because you've grown. And with that growth comes new boundaries, new clarity, new energy to protect. The thread's job isn't forever. It's now. It's this breath, this moment, this line you draw between the chaos outside and the calm you're learning to cultivate inside. It's temporary, yes, but so is everything. What matters is what you do with it while it lasts. Energy is precious, and the way you guard it tells the world what you believe you're worth. If you let everything in, if you absorb every emotion around you, if you say yes to what feels wrong just to keep peace, you're sending a message. Not just to others, but to your soul, that your boundaries don't matter, that your peace is negotiable, that your energy is free for anyone to take. But if you learn to say, "I protect this field, I honor this space, I choose my connections, I move from intention," then everything begins to change. Not just your energy, but your relationships, your environment, your sense of self. Because you're finally telling the universe, "I know who I am, and I refuse to be diluted." That's not selfishness, that's sacred stewardship. That's how the red thread becomes more than a symbol. It becomes a declaration of awakening, a quiet red streak on skin that signals the presence of someone who has stopped giving themselves away for free. Not all awakenings come with thunder. Some begin with a single decision, quiet as breath, small as thread. Maybe you were drawn to it by chance. Maybe you saw it on someone else and felt something stir. Maybe you couldn't explain why, but your hand reached for that red strand, as if your spirit had already remembered something your mind forgot. This isn't coincidence. Symbols call to us when we're ready, when something inside is tired of carrying what doesn't belong, when the soul decides enough is enough. That's when the red thread appears, not as a solution, but as a mirror. It shows you the truth you've been avoiding. You've been too open, not open-hearted, but boundaryless. And the world has crept in, uninvited, leaving pieces of itself behind in your nervous system. It begins like this. You wake up one day and realize you're not just exhausted, you're energetically bruised. The tiredness isn't from lack of sleep. It's from holding emotions that didn't start with you. You feel heavy not because your soul is broken, but because you've been absorbing noise from everyone and everything. That buzzing tension in your shoulders, not yours. That cloud of irritability in your chest? Picked up from the room? That deep fatigue that no nap can fix? That's the toll of spiritual exposure. That's what happens when you move through the world like an open wound. And this is what the red thread asks you to change. This act of tying it is not about avoiding life. It's about engaging with it differently. No more drifting through days with your energy field flapping open like an unlocked gate. No more saying yes to guilt disguised as love. No more agreeing to feel what others won't process themselves. When you bind that red thread around your wrist, you are not following a trend. You're drawing a contract with your own soul. A contract that says, from this moment forward, I show up with awareness. I choose what enters my sacred field. I guard what I give. This is spiritual adulthood. The moment you stop blaming others for your overwhelm. The moment you stop waiting for someone else to protect your peace. You realize the responsibility belongs to you, not with crystals or charms or someone else's wisdom, but with your own presence, pulsing inside your body like a drum beat. The thread is just a physical reminder of that presence, a loop around your wrist that brings you back to your power every time your mind forgets. Let's be honest, most of the world runs on unconscious exchange, people throwing energy around like loose change, conversations full of hooks, interactions that leave residue. You leave a visit with someone you love, and yet something sits in your chest like a stone. That's not just emotion, that's energetic spill. And without awareness, it clings. Without filters, you absorb. You confuse their pain for your purpose. You start solving problems that were never yours. You carry sadness that never belonged to your timeline, and all the while your body stores it, trying to hold it all without breaking. But eventually it does. You get sick, you feel anxious, you lose your joy. That's the cost of living without boundaries. That's what the thread is here to prevent. But the thread itself isn't magic, it's a tool. Like fire, it can warm you or burn you depending on how you use it. Tie it in haste, wear it in vanity, and it becomes just wool. But if you slow down, if you breathe deeply, quiet your thoughts and let your intentions speak, then it becomes something else. A declaration, a flame, a guardian. And don't be fooled by the silence of the act. There's more power in a single mindful knot than in 100 loud affirmations said without presence. When you tie that loop around your wrist, you are doing something primal, something ancient. You're aligning the outer with the inner. You're calling your awareness into form. You're saying, here is my edge. Here is my border. Here is where I begin and everything else ends. This doesn't make you rigid. It doesn't harden your heart. It softens your experience. You begin to notice how much lighter you feel when you're not picking up every ambient feeling in the air. You realize how calm you become when you stop trying to fix what was never yours. You learn the art of release, not by pushing away, but by filtering with grace. That's the secret most forget. Protection isn't rejection. Protection is discernment. It's saying yes to what aligns. It's saying no to what confuses. It's not shutting the world out. It's letting the world meet you on your terms. The red thread isn't a wall. It's a gateway. One you open and close consciously with love and wisdom. And don't be surprised if people feel the shift. When you start holding your energy with care, the dynamics around you begin to change. Some may draw back, some may test your edge, some may sense that your old self, the one who absorbed and overgave, is gone. That's okay. Let them feel that. You are not here to be porous for others. You're here to embody the fullness of who you are without dilution. You may even start noticing moments of resistance, your own internal habits pushing back. A voice in your head whispering, "Isn't this selfish? Or maybe I'm being too guarded. That's the old programming. That's the part of you trained to equate kindness with boundarylessness, to equate love with depletion. But you're not here to be emptied. You're here to shine. And nothing shines when it's buried under layers of borrowed emotion. So the thread becomes your teacher. Every day it sits on your skin, it asks, are you in your power today? Are you giving from overflow or from exhaustion? Are you letting emotions in because they resonate or because you're too tired to say no? That is the brilliance of this practice. It's not a one-time ritual. It's a living, breathing choice, a meditation in motion. You check in, you adjust, you renew. When the thread falls off, frays, or burns out energetically, you thank it. You let it go, and you begin again. That's not failure. That's the rhythm of sacred living, cycles, endings, renewal. Some days the thread might feel like a lifeline. Other days it might go unnoticed, but it's always there, doing its silent work, anchoring you back to yourself each time the world tries to scatter you. You reach for your phone, your attention drifting, and your fingers brush the thread. You're pulled back. You're reminded. You're not just reacting, you're choosing. That's what spiritual maturity looks like. Not floating above the chaos, but moving through it with clarity. Not hiding from emotion, but navigating it with sovereignty. The red thread is not about detachment, it's about deliberate engagement. You're not less sensitive, you're more selective. You're not less open, you're more aligned. There is grace in this kind of boundary. There is softness in this kind of strength. And over time, you'll notice the change. Your nervous system relaxes. Your sleep deepens. Your joy returns. Not because life became easier, but because your spirit stopped leaking. You stopped offering pieces of yourself to every emotional beggar. You stopped confusing empathy with self-erasure. The red thread becomes your signature, your quiet stand. You don't need to explain it. You don't owe anyone a reason. You just wear it, live it, be it. And those who need to understand will. Those who are ready to do the same will ask. And in that moment, you pass on the fire. You become the teacher, the guide, not with lectures but by example. And if one day you forget, if you fall back into old patterns, if the world seeps in through cracks you didn't notice, that's okay. That's human. You come back, you retie, you recommit. The thread is always waiting. The symbol never judges. It simply sits, soft and strong, asking only for your presence. So now let me ask you, are you ready to stop absorbing and start choosing? Are you ready to protect your spirit with the same reverence you protect your body? Are you ready to live as if your energy matters? Because it does. It always has. The world taught you to ignore it, to trade it, to scatter it. But your soul knows the truth. Your soul has been waiting for you to remember. So tie the thread, not as a trend, not for show, but for the quiet knowing that you are sacred, that your inner world is precious, that your presence, clean and whole, is more than enough. This is not superstition. This is soul practice, a gesture that speaks louder than 1,000 words, a knot that holds the weight of your intention, a color that burns with memory. You don't need a ritual. You don't need permission. You just need to choose. Choose to stand inside your own energy field, like a flame that cannot be borrowed. Choose to live in clarity. Choose to protect what fuels your light. Because you are not a sponge, you are not a dumping ground, you are not a carrier for collective sorrow, you are a vessel of vision, a keeper of peace, a being of sacred flame. Let the red thread remind you of that. Every day, every breath, and every choice,